Welcome to Rosie the Reviewer. We're your hosts. I'm Sam,
And I'm Marcia.
and we like World War II media, and we want to talk about it.
Welcome back to Rosie the Reviewer. This week we are discussing a movie called Ice Cold and Alex from 1958. It was recommended to us by my friend Ben, so thanks Ben for recommending it to us. Sam has also read the book, and I'll come to it in a second. The movie was directed by J. Lee Thompson and written by T.J. Morrison and Christopher Landon. It was based on a 1957 novel of the same name by Christopher Landon, who also then wrote on the movie, I guess. And it's an adventure story about a British officer, his NCO, two nurses, and a South African hitchhiker, who isn't really all that he seems, as they try and make their way to Alexandria in a rickety ambulance during the North African campaign. What did you think of the movie, Sam?
It's a solid adventure story, I think. I had a good time. I would say that all of the acting is pretty solid. I always like when there's a female character who has something to do. I will say that they made some changes from the book that I didn't necessarily love, but we can definitely get to that later. The book itself is also a really enjoyable read. I wouldn't say it's like a thinking man's book by any means. It's mostly this adventure story in the desert, and it's fun for what it is. What did you think of the movie?
I enjoyed it. I watched this movie very late last night, but it's really enjoyable. It is a bit long, maybe, but it's a very sort of camaraderie filled adventure in the desert. I mean, who doesn't love a desert adventure, right? And for the sort of narrow scope that it has, like we follow these people in an ambulance and pretty much nothing else, it's pretty exciting. So I really also did enjoy it.
I did think it was interesting. This movie comes out in 1958, which is a couple of years after the Suez Crisis. And this movie is set during a period of time in World War II when the British were on the back foot in North Africa. But they would go on to be successful in defeating the Germans and reclaiming their colonial holdings, I guess you would call them. And then when this movie comes out, obviously, the British are rather permanently on the back foot empire wise. So, yeah, just a little nod to what we talk about all the time, which is movies are often so clearly a product of when they're made.
Yes. And also for those of you wondering, it is a black and white movie. And I really enjoy like the look and feel of the movies from that time. They've got a sort of glamour to them that we don't see in movies nowadays anymore. At least I don't want to see them in movies nowadays, but they work if they're in black and white for some reason. And I just want to say, the ladies, there's two ladies in this movie, more or less, and they have perfect hair at all times. I'm like, how?
It's that desert dry wind, man. Keeps your hair in great shape. No, you know what I did love? The fact that everyone is drenched in sweat at all times. I mean, they did a great job of creating this atmosphere of the desert. You can tell how fucking hot it is. I read during production that, that sweat is not fake. They were really filming in the Libyan desert, and they had some long, hot days.
Man, imagine. I can't. No, I would rather not be in a desert. Thank you.
Apparently, at certain points during filming, they had such a bad fly problem that they had to drench the actors in DDT, which we don't use anymore.
We don't?
Yeah, it's super bad for you to have it on your skin.
Oh, I didn't know this. Well, great. Anyway, let's get into the plot.
The movie opens with a helpful map and narration explaining the North African campaign of World War II, during which Allied forces battled with Italian and German troops all along the Mediterranean coast of North Africa for imperialism reasons, as we've already briefly touched on. From 1940 to 1943. We have previously discussed in our SAS Rogue Heroes episodes how the port city of Tobruk in Libya changed hands several times in the early years of the war, including one 7-month period in 1941 wherein predominantly Australian soldiers were besieged in the city, and this will be relevant in the film. They'll make reference to it.
Go listen to our SAS Rock Heroes episodes. They're fun, and they're our most listened to episodes. So after the map, we land in Tobruk in 1942. In the midst of a shelling, Nurse Denise Norton, played by Diane Clare, flees for cover instead of boarding her ship to safety with the rest of her nursing sisters. Another nurse, Diana Murdoch, played by Sophia Sims, goes after her.
Yeah, I will say that in the movie, at least Denise gets some dialogue. In the book, she mostly screams the whole time, so I guess that was a marginal improvement.
From the beginning, I thought they were both gonna be with the group for a long time, and boy, was I wrong.
Yep. Captain George Anson, played by John Mills, and his best friend, Captain Paul Crosby, played by Richard Leach, discuss the possibility of a second siege of Tobruk. They know the German advance is coming, and they are the remaining ranking officers in an ambulance unit. There's a whole scene in the book that they did not include where this is made more clear. Basically, the opening sequence of the book is Anson and Crosby become aware that there are some ambulances from their unit that went out into the desert to ostensibly fetch some wounded people. Those ambulances didn't come back. The CO of their unit went out after those missing ambulances and he also didn't come back. And so Anson is like, we should probably go and try and find them, right? And Crosby's like, bro, I guess if we have to. So they go out into the desert and Anson, this is where we first start getting the hint that Anson is cracking up a little bit. He's been in the desert a long time. He's having a bit of a tough one. When they come back from the desert, you get the sense that Crosby really doesn't feel like Anson acquitted himself very well because at one point they pass by Germans in the night and Anson like freaks out. And Crosby's like, well, they're not going to do anything, bro, because from where they're sitting, we look like we're setting a trap. So they're obviously not going to follow us. And Anson's like, "Oh, yeah, that does make sense." But in his moment of panic and fear, Crosby seems to lose a lot of respect for him, and that's kind of the inciting incident that damages their relationship. We don't see any of that in the movie. I don't think that you need it, but it does sort of give you maybe more of a sense of Anson's character right off the hop. Anyway, in the movie, Anson promises Crosby that he'll make sure that Crosby gets to leave before the siege if there's another one. But Anson is soon directed by his brigadier, played by Liam Redmond, who is just chilling in the bath while they're getting shelled. He's told that Crosby must stay behind to coordinate what ambulances will be left within the city in the event of a siege, while Anson is to go with the main corps of ambulances that is departing to safety. And of course, this goes over poorly with Crosby.
This Brigadier made me laugh so much. It's such a silly character, and then he gets up from his bath and gives Anson a little flash because he can see him looking away. Made me laugh. It's so funny. But I thought it was so stupid, this character. It's like a very unserious brigadier, this man.
Yeah, in the book, they talk about how he's well known for this one moment in a battle where he ran up to some Germans and started yelling at them in like atrocious German, and like the Germans were so shocked that they didn't shoot at him. And yeah, that gets referenced a couple more times as
Mm,
well. So he's a very classic, like, like maverick British officer that you see a lot of the times in these war movies.
I also totally did not realize that Ensign was part of an ambulance unit. For some reason, it just seemed to me that he was appointed to rescue these women, but I don't know if I just wasn't paying attention. I had no subtitles, by the way, so maybe that's part of the reason why, but it wasn't very clear to me that these were his ambulances that he was driving.
Yeah, I would definitely say it's less clear. The opening situation is less clear in the movie than it is in the book. I would agree with that.
Next, we get the introduction, I think, of both of our favorite male character in this movie, and probably also maybe in the book. It's Sergeant Major Tom Pugh, played by Harry Andrews, and he's fixing up the ambulances. You can instantly tell that he cares for Ensign because he goes to see him, and he's like, get some sleep, and it's quite sweet. I quite enjoyed this character.
Yeah, Tom is very solid, reliable, your classic NCO, I think. The guy who gets all the real shit done, under the officers. Him and Anson have a really lovely relationship, I think. And actually, the book is dedicated to a Tom Pugh. I had a look and I wasn't able to find too much information about the real one, but it says, for Tom Pugh, remembering many years' friendship, and through him to mark my admiration of all the RAMC and RASC personnel who served with ambulance cars in the Western Desert.
That's cool. I guess he's kind of the Lipton of the bunch, if we're comparing this to Band of Brothers. He's kind of the sweet, looking after everybody, no nonsense kind of guy.
Yeah, definitely. And by now, as well, it's pretty clear that Anson has a pretty significant drinking problem, which will become a major theme in the movie and certainly a major note in his character arc. And it's the same thing in the book, too. I mean, and even the name of it, right? Ice Cold and Alex. The whole goal of this for him is that ice cold beer waiting for him in Alexandria.
For the longest time before I started watching the movie, obviously, then it made sense to me, but I was like, what is this title? What does it mean? Who is Alex? What is a place? It's not a person.
Well, as soon as I got the book, it was very clear to me. It has a picture of a nice, cold, tall pint of beer on the front. Anson and Tom are instructed to take on the two nursing sisters who were left behind. If you recall, Denise ran away during the shelling because she was afraid, and Diana followed after her. And he's to get them to safety in Alexandria. Unfortunately, they set off in this ambulance, but things are immediately off to a rough start when they hit the road. They're traveling in the convoy behind the Brigadier's vehicle, which contains their bags and Tom's toolkit. And they are following it and they get to see it get absolutely destroyed in a shelling. And so there's all their shit gone. And almost immediately afterwards, they get separated from the rest of the convoy because as they're about to cross a bridge, they get stopped by the military police who won't let them pass because they're blowing the bridge to prevent the Germans from using it.
I'm just annoyed because it took them just about as long to back up the ambulance as it would have for them to cross. It's like, really? Just go over it. But I guess in real life, it would have been very difficult to cross it. So I'll give them some benefit of the doubt here.
Yeah, yeah. Ideally, you don't want to blow up your ambulance if you can avoid it.
So not only can they not cross the bridge, they have to turn around and then they have to pass through a minefield, which is really fun, not. But Ensign thankfully has some experience navigating this area, but it's still very dangerous. Denise is not having a good time. She's screaming and wanting to get out of the ambulance the entire time, so they have to tranquilize her a little bit to keep her down. And that's when Tom, our favorite character, informs Diana about Ensign's drinking problem, and he's like, maybe you can help him manage it a little bit. Which is weird, right? Why would she be able to help him there?
Well, she's a nurse, I guess. So you might figure she has some bedside manner, some medical know how. She does immediately go to the front of the ambulance and she's like, hey, maybe we don't get wasted before you're about to navigate us through the minefields. And Anson's like, you know what? You're speaking some sense, woman. So they stop at a water station prior to entering the minefield. Obviously, when you're traveling a long way through the desert, water is king. They encounter a South African officer named Vanderpool, played by Anthony Quayle, doing a passable South African accent. And he joins their party. Initially, they're a little leery of taking him on because they do have this important mission. But they're basically like, yeah, he's big and strong. He can help us in the desert. He speaks German, so that could be helpful. And it's decided that him and Anson will walk ahead of the ambulance through the minefield. And then we get our first instance of Vanderpool not listening to Anson and trying to do his own thing. And because of that, he accidentally steps on what they think might be a mine, but it turns out just to be a can buried in the sand. And this scene is not really in the book. Like they do pass through the minefield, but this little bit is not in there. But I think it was really effective of the screenwriters to add it because it does add this like quite prolonged, lovely moment of tension into it.
I agree, and I also really enjoyed how Anson was basically a little shit about the can in the field. He was like, oh, it's a can, and tosses it. I'm like, don't toss it back into the minefield, be careful.
Right? Very cavalier about that.
They managed to get through the minefield, but as they do, German bombers light it up. So they get out of there just in time. And it also means that soon the German armored divisions will be coming their way. They soon do encounter them, and poor Denise gets shot. Anson tries to take the very difficult to maneuver ambulance and make some really risky defense maneuvers. It made me laugh though, it's really funny. But when there's no way out of there and the Germans basically have him surrounded, Vanderpool, who very conveniently is very good at speaking German, he goes up to the Germans and gets them to let them pass. Also because they tell them that Denise is wounded and she's dying, but they won't say that she's dying because then they have a better chance of being let through. And I thought this was kind of sad. Poor Denise, she's having a very bad time.
Yeah. Very unfortunate for Denise. But yeah, again, another really nice moment of suspense where you don't really know what's going to happen and they're pretty concerned they're going to end up spending the rest of the war in a German POW camp.
Yep. When you were reading the book, were you suspicious of Vanderpool, who's not named Vanderpool in the book, I don't think?
No, he's the only character whose name has been changed. His name was Zimmerman in the book. But yeah, you are suspicious of him for sure because you get his point of view sometimes. Actually, it's interesting. There's a super brief portion of the book where you get the ambulance's point of view. That's when you first learn about the future troubles that they're going to have with the ambulance. And then super, super briefly, you also get Denise's point of view while she's dying because she speaks German and she can hear Vanderpool speaking to the Germans and like knows what he's saying, but she can't tell them because she's dying. And you kind of see that in the movie, but you don't really like understand what she's trying to tell them.
No, I didn't catch on to that. No, but I'm really there's something funny in the movie with Vanderpool because he's very adamant that they pronounce his name right. I don't know why.
I don't know, for funsies, little character quirk. The group continue to be suspicious of newcomer Vanderpool. He doesn't know how to brew desert coffee, which they think is weird because the South African Corps brews coffee the same way the British do. And they know this because Anson briefly served with the South African Corps. Anson tries to trick Vanderpool into admitting he knows fake people in the South African Corps. He's like, "Oh, do you know this guy?" And Vanderpool's like, "Yeah, I know that guy." And then Anson's like, "Do you know this guy?" And he just makes up a name. And Vanderpool's like, No. So it doesn't work. And they see Vanderpool wandering off every night at the same time with this big suspicious pack that he won't let out of his sight. And they're like, what is he doing out there? He can't be taking a routine shit every night at 9 p.m. There's just no way.
I did enjoy the scene where he tries to trick him into admitting knowing people who don't exist. It's nicely subtle, but you immediately know what he's trying to do.
Yeah, pretty early on, I would say, in the book, the trio are suspicious of Vanderpool, but Anson is very like, I don't want to talk about it. There's no point in talking about it right now because there's nothing we can do about it. We kind of need him because, I mean, there's a couple scenes that we even see, like when they're trying to dig a grave for Denise, he's the only one strong enough to break through that like rocky layer. And there's like a couple other moments too where they need his like physical strength because he's a big guy. And obviously he's helped them get away from the Germans once. So they're like, well, he's probably a spy, but seeing as there's nothing we could do about it, let's let him go on thinking he's pulling the wool over our eyes.
Yeah, like, what would you even do? Just leave him behind in the
Well,
desert?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Anson feels some responsibility for Denise's death, and he says he won't be drinking again until he can have an ice cold beer at his favorite bar in Alexandria. Movie title, almost. This is when they bury Denise, as Sam just already mentioned. Anson starts digging the grave, and then he's like, I've hit rock, I can't go any further, I have to start over somewhere else. And then Vanderpool actually does just cut through the rock. He seems to be a pleasant man. I don't know, he's helpful. So I guess they made the right choice so far of letting him stay.
Yeah. And the scene in the movie is much like the one in the book. I think it's Tom who they're all waiting for someone to say something, but like none of them really know this lady. Like even Diana doesn't know her very well. So Tom tries to do the whole like the Lord is my shepherd, and then he starts forgetting the words and then he kind of just trails off. I don't know, it's kind of awkward and sweet, like they're doing their best kind of thing.
They're best in a bad situation.
I wanted to read this passage from the book. This is the very first couple of paragraphs in the book, and it's while Anson is in Tobruk and it's being shelled and obviously very noisy and stuff. They served it ice cold in Alex. For the moment that he shut his eyes, he could see every detail of that little bar in the lane off Maumet Ali Square. The high stools, the marble-topped counter, the Greek behind it. Then the sound of the place came back, the purr of the overhead fan, a fly buzzing drowsily, the muffled noise of the traffic seeping in through the closed door. If I think of that long enough, there might be a chance of forgetting this bloody noise, he thought, but it didn't help. Then he thought about the beer itself, in tall, thin glasses, so cold that there was a dew glistening on the outside of them, even before they were put down on the counter, the pale amber clearness of it, the taste, last of all. It did not help much either. It did not shut out the sound of the endless shells that screamed over his head, only delayed the inevitable visit to the back of the truck for another whiskey. Perhaps, more than anything, it made him realize that for the first time he was entirely afraid.
What a lovely way of describing that little bar. That sounds quite good.
right? I'm like, "Damn," like, me watching them sweat to death in this desert throughout this movie, I was like, "I could go for an ice cold beer."
It also does make it apparent to me that he has a drinking problem because he's so focused on the details of that beer. Like, no normal person would be so focused on the details of that beer.
And it's interesting because before the taste comes last of all, like, he's really focused on the context of enjoying this ice cold beer. It takes him back to this earlier time in his life. And in the book, they get into it a bit more. Him and his best friend Crosby used to go on all their leaves together. They met this woman named Ariadne who lives in Cairo, I think, and they both kind of fell in love with her. He explains it super briefly in the movie, but it's elaborated on a lot more in the book. And yeah, you can tell that imagining this beer is kind of nostalgic for him almost because he's remembering also a time in his relationship with Crosby that he doesn't think he'll be able to get back to either.
That makes me sad.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
Speaking of bummers,
They began to have a recurring problem with the engine wherein the cooling system has a washer that is crumbling and causing it to leak water, which has to be replaced at more and more frequent intervals. As you can imagine, driving a truck through the desert, the engine gets really hot. If you don't have a working cooling system, it will soon overheat. And if you're having to constantly pour your drinking water into the engine, that's not ideal either.
no, that's like, first of all, you're not fixing anything, and you're also giving yourself another problem, which is not having enough drinking water. So, not a good situation. Can I just, I enjoyed that they called the ambulance Katie. I think it's on, even on the ambulance.
Yeah. So in the book, they reference it as like the driver, the original driver of the ambulance. His wife's name is Katie, but the make and model of the ambulance, it's an Austin K2Y. And because of K2, a lot of Commonwealth and American forces nicknamed it Katie affectionately.
I love that. But it also, the ambulance in this movie is very much a character. It's not a car, like, it's such an integral part of the story that it becomes this character. And it makes me wonder what it sounds like. You just said that there's something from the ambulance's point of view in the book.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look that up because it sounds really interesting.
Yeah. It's basically the ambulance being like, well, you don't know this yet, but my cooling system's gonna be fucked. And also a spring is gonna go. And hopefully you figure it out before it's too late.
Because the desert and the dying ambulance is not their only enemy, they encounter some more Germans. And this is when they learn that Tobruk has fallen to the Axis powers. And Vanderpool gets them out of the situation yet again. Very convenient. And they realize they will have to take another route to Alexandria because of the German movements. So they have to avoid them.
Yeah, this is making shit really tough because there are, of course, lots of longer paths they could take, but they can't really afford to add too many miles onto their journey because of the situation that they're having with the truck. So,
There's no good answers for them, I suppose. They just have to kind of wing it and see how far they get.
yeah. One of the springs goes on the truck, and Vanderpool saves all of their asses because basically, if this 1-ton truck falls on the axle, it's going to break the other spring as well. And so he ends up going under the truck and basically supporting all of its weight for a few seconds, just with pure beefiness, just with being swole. Yeah, and if he had not done that, they would have been fucked, right? They would have had to walk like 100 miles with no water, which they definitely would not have survived. And so he gets a little fucked up by it, of course. He hurts his back, but he ends up being okay. And a friendly plane passes by and drops them a message, essentially alerting them to the fact that the Germans are on the march. And that ends up redirecting them yet again. And now they're going to be forced to travel on a dangerous path through this depression. And this is the Qattara Depression, which is in Egypt. It's the lowest point in Africa, averaging 200 feet below sea level, but it's 436 feet below sea level at its deepest point. It is the world's largest sinkhole. And so the reason why it's dangerous to travel through is that essentially underneath, it's all wet. And in the height of a desert day, the sun bakes like a crust onto the top. And so there is a trail that you can take through it that's kind of like a packed road. But if you veer off the trail at all, you end up on this unstable crust, which you could potentially collapse through, and then you would get sucked into the muck.
I wonder what's going to happen.
Yes, foreshadowing.
At this point, it's become too glaringly obvious that Vanderpool is not who he says he is. So the group of them, excluding Vanderpool, discuss this together, but they agree not to do anything for the aforementioned reasons, and they get a little lucky because they get to the oasis so they can get more water and petrol prior to entering the depression. There they encounter a British officer played by Peter Arney who warns them about how perilous it will be in case you needed any more warning.
Yes, he's basically been left behind by the British to spoil the water and petrol supply so that the advancing Germans don't get it. He's like, "Wow, luckily you got here just in time. Also, you better hurry up. Also, don't die going through the depression."
He was so sassy, like he pretended to be an enemy at first and held them at gunpoint for a second because he didn't know who they were. And he had to suss them out to see if they were an enemy or not. And I enjoyed this brief other character that we don't see again.
Yeah, it was kind of fun. They start their drive through the depression, and as they do, the little trio hatch a plan to catch Vanderpool in the act of using his radio transmitter, which they think is what is in his suspicious pack that he won't let anyone else touch. However, he heads out onto the path to ostensibly use his transmitter. They turn the headlights on of the truck, and he tries to run away from the headlights and obviously ends up leaving the track, and he almost drowns in the muck. And there's this whole long scene where Anson and Tom have to rescue him from the muck.
Yeah, this scene took like 5 whole minutes. It's super long.
It is long. Another good moment of tension where they really drew out a scene from the book for the movie watching audience. I think it works. And there's a Vanderpool obviously has been in the muck, so they do this like old-timey method of CPR on him called the Sylvester method, where they basically put his arms above his head and then pull them down next to his body, which was ostensibly to recreate the act of breathing by forcing your lungs to open and compress. But it was invented in 1861 and used in various parts of the world until the 1960s, but it's not really effective. But I just thought it was interesting when I saw them doing that. I was like, "Oh, huh."
It makes you realize how fairly new CPR is.
For sure.
It's wild. So, Sam, how happy are you about the next scene?
I'm not happy at all. 'Cause Anson and Diana strike up a situationship, and I hate every second of it because in the book, Diana ends up with Tom, sweet, reliable, big, strong Tom, and I don't know, in the movie, they're just like, "No, she obviously has to go for the hero, otherwise what's the point?" And I kinda hated it because it janked up their relationship between, like, the whole group to me. Like, in the
Yeah.
book, it's kind of nice because her and Tom are having this, like, sweet, quiet little romance, and it's very, like, natural and it makes sense, and you can see what she likes in him. Then her and Anson do have this discussion where he talks to her about his situation with Paul and with Ariadne, and she's like, "Well, you just don't know what women want." But, like, the conversation is a lot sweeter when they're just friends, and they do have, like, quite a few just, like, friendly discussions with each other, and so, I just feel like the group dynamics are so much better in the book, and I don't know why they did this, but anyway, yeah, wasn't thrilled about it.
No, I feel like Anson is so mean to her the entire time as well.
In the book, it's cute because when they get back to Alexandria, because he's like an NCO, he has to get like, permission to get married, and it's like this cute little thing. And yeah, and you can tell that like, they're gonna live happily ever after. And it's like Anson and Diana, it's like he's a alcoholic who's about to have a mental breakdown. What is even gonna happen here?
Yeah. Well, one of the examples of him being mean to her is when they struggled to catch the ambulance out of the far end of the depression because of the soft sand. And he's basically yelling at her to help push. And she keeps falling over because it's impossible. And he keeps yelling at her. And then she has to talk him out of his mantra, which made me laugh to read this in the notes, but it's man tantrum.
Yeah, he totally loses it. And I don't know what it is, man, but in the book it's just so much more sympathetic. Maybe it's because you get more of his inner monologue, I suppose. You're just like so much more sympathetic to him in the book, I think, of his like, he doesn't want to give up now when they're so close to the end. In the movie he just kind of annoyed me, but I was like, okay, well, so they figure out this method of getting the ambulance up the hill, which the simple version is that if you do like the manual crank of the engine while the ambulance is going backwards, the tires will spin slowly enough that they can actually bite the sand rather than getting bogged down. But of course, that involves a lot of manual effort. And in the book, all four of them take turns turning the crank. And they take turns, and it's a team effort, and they get to the top of the hill, and they're like, woohoo, we did it. Fucking teamwork. The real meaning was friendship all along. We did it with the power of friendship. Anyways, in the movie, Diana takes like one crack at turning the crank and then she like immediately gives up and the truck just like rolls down the hill. And after they've been working on it for hours, and I was like, why? Why have we done this? For some fucking reason, Diana's the weak link. I wonder why. And then they pat her on the head and they're like, how about you drive the truck for a while and like put her in the truck. And then they do manage to get the ambulance out and like, I don't know. I was mad about this change. I was like, why have we done this?
I know, but Anson does kind of apologize. He's like, sorry, I should have put the brake on. I'm like, yes, you should have, you dickhead.
Yeah, really. I also read that apparently during production, there was no like safety to prevent the ambulance from rolling down the hill if one of the actors happened to be behind it, which apparently they really reamed out the director for.
Oh man, I don't think they could do that today. Like, if that happened today, there would be a full stop on production.
I know. They really cut the directors a lot of slack back in the day. They're like, yeah, they wanted to get the best performance out of us. I'm like, they're paying you to act. I'm sure you can act like you're in danger, even if you are not.
I should hope so. But yeah, they do like get up there on their second attempt and they make it out of the depression. And they get to Alexandria and they go for that lovely bar with that ice cold beer. And because they're decent people, I guess, they agree to turn Vanderpool into the military police as a German officer so that he'll be treated well in the POW camp instead of as a spy, which would result in him being executed. And as he's being taken away, he says, all against the desert, the greater enemy.
Yeah. Again, I think in the book you get a better sense of their camaraderie and the fact that they're all kind of like a little four-person unit that is bonded by their their trauma and their quest to survive in the desert.
I didn't hate Vanderpool. I thought he was an interesting character, but also he was suspicious as fuck.
Yeah, perhaps not the best spy. They were like, "Bro, you got us out of trouble with the Germans twice. Did you not think that was gonna be a little bit suspicious?" Part of the reason why this movie is so well known is that in the late 1980s, this ending scene where they drink the beer was used in a Carlsberg commercial because as you can see in the movie, like the glasses are very clearly labeled Carlsberg, like that's the brand of beer that they're drinking. And so yeah, apparently this commercial became super well known.
I'll see if I can find it. And if I do find it, I'll put it on the website.
Nice.
I thought it was really quite. They have a very cinematic scene of. It's probably Anson running his finger over the dew covered glass. I really like that scene. I can understand why they would turn it into a commercial.
Absolutely. I mean, again, it definitely made me crave that ice cold beer on a hot summer's day. There's nothing better. I do like how they roll up in this bar as well, looking like absolute ragamuffins, and the guy doesn't want to serve them at first. And this happens in the book too. Anson's like, "Oh, he doesn't think we can pay." So he like whips out his like crumpled money that he's been carrying around for like the last however many days that he's been saving so that he can buy them all a beer when they get to Alexandria.
Anson just absolutely chucks the beer. I'm like, really? Do you not want to enjoy your beer like two seconds longer?
I know. This is George drinking problem Anson, ladies and gentlemen. But I also laughed when he chugged it because the guy who's pouring the beer pours the beer from like a foot and a half off the rim of the glass. Like, I mean, I'm exaggerating, obviously, but he pours it in such a way that it leaves a massive head. And then Anson immediately just like necks it. And I'm like, that's a lot of foam.
All's well ends well, I guess. They had their nice little beer in Alex.
Yes, they did.
You have one remaining note.
Yes. Landon, who wrote the book, served with the Royal Army Medical Corps and the Royal Army Service Corps in North Africa during the Second World War. So obviously, the book is pretty extensively based on his experiences. And I've seen some people online, I think even maybe at the beginning of the movie, it says something like inspired by true events. I don't think this is like quote unquote based on a true story or anything. Like all the characters are fictional, but I think that probably a lot of the little anecdotes happened to him or people that he knew when he was serving in North Africa. I knew as I was reading it, I'm like, this guy definitely served because the details are detailing. He articulates what it's like being in the desert so beautifully, like when he's talking about the scenery and stuff and what it felt like. When he's talking about the problems they're having with the ambulance, he's like so specific. I always like that when you get a little window into what it was like for someone who was actually there. And then in what is sort of a sad and poignant footnote, considering the journey of Anson in this film, Landon died of alcohol poisoning at home in 1961.
Man, that's like 4 years after he wrote the book.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Makes you wonder if he modeled Anson after himself, especially since Tom Pugh was apparently real. Makes you wonder if they were just a little, like, team.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Wow. That makes me sad.
I know, right?
We do have to rate this movie, but before we rate this movie, we would like to remind you that you can get this episode and all other episodes wherever you get your podcast. And if you could rate us 5 stars, we would appreciate it. You can follow us on Spotify as well. I would like that very much. And you can share this episode with a friend.
We're gonna be sharing this episode with a friend. We get an ice cold beer in Alex.
So please do.
You know what's funny to me? I'm also gonna read you this little thing from this is from the dedication page of the book. The author wishes to stress the fact that any derogatory remarks on the conduct of the UDF made in this novel must be taken in the context in which they are said. Having served with the 1st SA Division, the author knows that the truth is entirely contrary. So with that in mind, I think we should rate it derogatory remarks about the South Africa Corps out of 10.
So what's the UDF?
Union Defense Force.
Alright, so we are gonna rate this movie derogatory remarks about the South Africa Corps out of 10. So, do you want to start rating it?
Sure. I will give this movie 7 derogatory remarks about the South Africa Corps out of 10. It is a pretty enjoyable watch, but it loses points for me because they made completely unnecessary changes to the female character and the romantic arc that I thought made it weaker, in my opinion. I just liked the dynamics of the group better in the book. I think they work better based on who the characters are. Nevertheless, it's a pretty nice looking movie considering the fact that it's in black and white. I think that back then they had to be a lot cleverer with the way they set up shots and the way they used lighting and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, an enjoyable watch. I do recommend reading the book. I had a good time. It was one of those ones I polished off in a day, like by no means a difficult read. What about you?
I will rate this movie 6.8 derogatory remarks about the South Africa Corps out of 10. So almost a 7. I enjoyed it. I liked the adventure of it. I liked the stakes of it, but I wasn't really all that sucked into it, and I don't know why. Like, I kept kind of getting distracted and looking at my phone and all that sort of stuff. So I enjoyed it, but it wasn't very gripping for me. So I might watch it again, and I might actually read the book because it sounds like a fun read.
Yeah, for sure. I think you'd like it.
Yeah, well, I've said this probably a million times before about other books that I've then gone on not to read, but I can keep trying, right?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe this is your year.
It's a new year, so new year, new chances. Who knows?
Yeah.
Are you reading anything new currently?
I am reading Easy Company Soldier by Don Malarkey and Bob Welch. I know it feels like I should have gotten to this one before because I've owned this book for like 2.5 years, but we're getting to it now. And this will make 53 books that I've read this year, I think, which is like pretty impressive when you consider I've been in school full time as well and also working.
I'm really fucking proud of you. And I really enjoyed that book. I read that book when we were doing our very first episode, and I read it in a day, which says something about the book. That it's not a difficult read, but it is a very, like, sincere read. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I've heard from people who have read multiple ones, books from the, I guess, Band of Brothers canon, that this is one of the better ones because I've read the one that Babe, Heffron, and Bill Garnier wrote, which was fine, but you can tell that they're not writers. I read, of course, Band of Brothers by Stephen Ambrose, which is a whole other can of worms. I mean, I'm sure we talk shit about that book in our Band of Brothers episodes. But yeah, no, this one's really good so far. I agree.
I remember it making me cry at some point, so I don't know where in the book you are, but good luck.
Thank you. I'm ready.
I'm not reading anything new, as usual. I am watching a bunch of Stranger Things stuff. Like, I'm on my however many rewatch for the moment, so enjoy that.
Nice.
And I'm looking forward to doing this new year. Can you believe? It's coming up on our third year of recording, which is wild. Like in April, we'll have done 2 years.
I know. It's pretty wild.
I'm looking forward to it. We have a couple things planned, or I say we, but I mean me because I'm a nerd, for like the Instagram and stuff. So hopefully we'll get some fun stuff, and then we'll get some fun guests, and we'll have another good year.
Definitely. Once I'm done school, I'm planning on doing a lot more, like, blog posts and that kinda stuff too, hoping to be more involved on that front.
Lovely. It'll be fun. Anyway, thank you for listening, everybody. And thank you for being with us for another year. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.